Recently, we've talked a fair bit, more than usual, certainly, about triggers. It's a pretty important subject because in the absence of loving and teaching, without having the capacity to react differently and without realizing that we're even just reacting, triggers end up controlling our lives. As people progress in learning real love, they very often write to me and say, my gosh, I react all day long. All day long, I'm reacting to somebody or something. And what I'm learning is they're actually underestimating how much they react to people and things. Because in the times that they don't realize they're reacting, how could they count that as a time? See? So it's all the time. People wake up in the morning and they'll go, I'm having a bad day. They don't know why. It could be because of the way their third grade teacher said a thing. It could be because parents or other people used a word in a certain way or setting. It could be a traumatic event that occurred when the predominant color in a room was turquoise. Who knows why we react to things? So triggers are everywhere, and pay attention. You can't stop them. They're going to happen. You will be triggered by some past event. They're like avalanches. Here are these uncounted tons of snow up at the top of a mountain, and it appears to be stable, and it's been there for years perhaps, and some little thing, the sound of a shotgun, they sometimes intentionally cause these things to fall, the tectonic shift of the Earth's plates, something moves, and that entire years of accumulation comes rolling down. The triggers are going to happen in your life. What matters is what we do next. So I'll give it to you. We involuntarily respond to some things, but we only get to blame those things for the first 1.8 seconds that we're triggered. I'm making this up, of course. Now, if we've never been taught, if we've never been loved, our entire lives will be controlled by triggers. And I would entirely concur with somebody who says, I can't help it all the time. I can't help it. I can't help doing this. I can't help being ugly, defensive, attacking, bitter, victim-y, blaming. If you've never been taught differently, how could you help it? But we're here to change all that. So the trigger's a given. What do we do next? We've talked about this a lot. Pause, stop, shut up, whatever expression works for you personally. I personally use shut up or sometimes stop just because it gets my attention. It's not demeaning. I don't demean myself by saying, shut up, you fool. No, it's just shut up, stop. What am I doing? Am I responding proportionately to whatever's happening? No, I'm responding disproportionately. Well, now by definition, we have a trigger. Do I want to keep being triggered and being controlled by a reaction to events that might be 60 years old? No kidding. No, I don't. What would I rather do? And I come up with an answer. What am I capable of doing? Because what would I rather do may be some kind of unrealistic ideal. Well, I would like to be Buddha and, respond with absolute Zen-like, and I realize I'm mixing religions here, with just Zen-like peace. Well, that's what I'd like to do, but I may not be capable of doing that. So what can I do? Sometimes it might be simply withdraw from the situation gracefully, not with a storming out. Let's illustrate how this could work in real life with two real people that I've spoken to recently. We'll call them Alan and Jill. We'll say they're married. It doesn't really matter. Both were raised in fairly average families, which is not particularly a compliment. We say average and we picture, well, an average amount of love. Yeah, an average amount of love, unconditional love, regrettably, is none. So they were not unconditionally loved as children. So they both get triggered fairly easily by quite a variety of events. Now, picture this. It's complicated enough, just one person being triggered. They could be triggered by tens of thousands of past events, or collections of events, or connections of events. The symbiosis of all these events can be mind-boggling. Kind of like I spent many years in medicine as a physician. We mostly know the side effects of one medication, but even one is incredibly complicated because there's always somebody who reacts spectacularly badly to that medication and could die. It's called an idiosyncratic reaction, which is different from an allergic reaction. So just one medication can kill people. If you go to two medications, there are a few studies that show that if you're on drug A and then you take drug B, the interactions are likely to be this. But only a few studies. We only know a few of the side effects of using two meds. If you go to three, we're now in the outer space of drug interactions. We have no idea what's going on. So let's apply this to human beings emotionally. We have tens of thousands of potential triggers interacting. Get it now? This is a mess. So I get asked this every single day without exception. I don't know why I reacted in a particular way, or I don't know why my partner interacted. And I go, well, we could ask this question all day long, and we wouldn't really know why. It might be in part due to the precipitating event right in front of your face, but that could be only like 0.2% of the problem. And the trigger really comes from past events that you don't even remember. So figuring out the why is fairly futile. So back to these two people. Not unconditionally loved. The reason all this came up is they both get triggered individually by tens of thousands of things. Now let's put them together. What triggers their interacting badly? Oh, anything. No kidding. And with these two, these guys were living examples of being triggered all the time. So Alan, the guy, had been working unusually long hours from his home business. So Jill was feeling neglected. Here he is in the same house with her, but he's buried in his study or work area or office or whatever, and he's not paying attention to her. She was feeling neglected. Why? Now, it would seem that the answer is really obvious, right? She's feeling neglected because Alan isn't paying attention to her. Wrong. That might be part of it. But the major reason, no, not at all. So tempting to blame it on him, which is exactly what she was about to do. She'd been neglected by her parents all her life. That's the real reason that she was triggered. She was already hypersensitized to that particular form of injury and was therefore hypervigilant about being, notice the two words, they sound the same, but they're not, hypersensitized to the injury and hypervigilant about being hurt again in the same way. So then she marries her first husband, Bob. I have no idea what his name was, who also neglected her, continuing the same pattern of injury from her childhood, who distanced himself from her and left her feeling alone emotionally. Again, I could say again 10,000 times and I wouldn't get across the pain that she feels from being alone. So Jill was doubly, triply hypersensitized, hypersensitive to being neglected. To learn more about that, read the book about PCSD. Alan decides that he's been neglecting Jill. He decides this on his own. That should be considered a miracle. Wow. He's sitting there in his study and going, I've been neglecting my sweet wife. So he leaves his computer. This just sounds wonderful so far, doesn't it? And he goes upstairs where Jill is vacuuming. He grabs her romantically, like you would see in the movies, especially the old movies. In the old movies, kissing was such a violent thing. I wonder that they didn't break their teeth. He grabs her, swings her into his arms, and tries to kiss her. I mean, you would think this would be a romance novel's dream. You'd think this would be exactly what Jill would want. She's feeling neglected, and he comes up and just lays on the attention. You'd think this would be beautiful. But see, Jill had already been having a conversation in her head for an hour, probably longer, that went something like this. Quote, and I'm not quoting her exactly, but after talking to her, I got the gist of the conversation. He never spends time with me. He says he loves me, but where is he? The attitude was, I am duplicating her attitude. Oh, working. He's working just like everybody else claims that they're doing when they ignore me. And that's true. Her parents had always been working. Her first husband had always been working. She said he's just distant and unavailable. She didn't say this part, but this part's very important. Distant and unavailable, just like her parents and ex-husband. End quote. That was her conversation going on in her head for an hour. So imagine what kind of state she'd worked herself up into in that hour when he came up to be romantic. She was pretty hyper vigilant and annoyed when Alan came up to genuinely love her. So she responds to his amorous advance. He was not angling for sex. He wasn't trying to get something. I know them both. I talked to them both. He just came up to pay some attention to her. She responds by what? Oh, my dear, I'm in love with you too. And they ride off into the sunset in their own romance novel. No. She pushes him away and says, what are you doing? Those of you who've never had a romantic relationship, no, pretty much everybody understands this if they've had any kind of relationship at all. What are you doing? Why? Why are you doing this now? Now, he wouldn't even know what she's talking about because for an hour she's been going, well, where is he? How come he's never here? He's never here. By the time he arrived, she had convinced herself that he didn't love her at all. And he arrives to love her, and so she's going to prove to him that he doesn't love her. What are you doing? Why now? Her parents were never there for her. Her ex would appear occasionally to give her attention, but then he always wanted sex or money because he didn't work or whatever. So when Alan appeared, that was all she could think about. All of that, and then to reflexively, now we're talking about PCSD, as soon as we say reflexively and immediately, there's no thought to this. That's the problem with reacting. It's brainless. It's like chemistry. You put two chemicals together, and baby, how they react is utterly predictable. There are formulas for it. No two chemicals get together and decide what they're going to do. They just do it. That's why it's called actually a chemical reaction. People should very often be just called emotional reactions because we respond very little smarter than that. She reflexively defends herself from what? Alan? Now, she would think so, but no. She's reflexively defending herself from all the people in her past. Well, who could possibly productively respond to that kind of reaction? So how did Alan respond? He said, now, he went up there intending to be romantic and affectionate. He responds by reacting and says, well, I am not going to get sucked into this drama. He's been doing real love longer, so he knows more of the real love lingo. And is he correct? Is she playing a drama? Yeah, she's playing clearly a drama in her head. But she didn't need his clinical observation. I refuse to respond to get sucked into this drama. And he walks out of the room. Why? Because of her? Nope, same thing, just like with her. Because of the past. He grew up in a home that was so chaotic and vicious and unkind and selfish that he learned as a really young child that the only way to get away from the drama, he used the word with his partner, the only way to get away from the drama was to leave the house. So as early as age 4, he would just wander the streets of the town where he was raised to get away from the drama. So when she got all excited in her own drama, he just went, I'm out of here. So we got one trigger, hers, which triggers his, and then poof, he's gone, which of course then triggers hers because she has a fear of being abandoned. It's just a nightmare. She feels abandoned. She decides, well, if you're going to leave, it sounds insane later. At the time, it's really not nearly this funny. She decides, well, if you're going to leave, I'm going to leave more. So she leaves and gets a hotel to spend the night in another city. If this were to continue to its natural conclusion, I suppose he would move to Mars. But she leaves and gets a hotel. They send unkind texts back and forth, then pleading texts. Oh, please do. Neither of them has any idea what's going on. This whole insanity is just one chemical reaction after another, completely brainless. So now what? So one of them, I don't remember who, had the sense to get help, recognized that they were trapped and triggered. Why don't we do something different and get some counsel? So I talked to them both at the same time. And I asked what happened. And she said, he's always, and you know, it really doesn't matter what follows after that. He's always blah, 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 blah. Really, just accusations. They all turn into blah, blah, blah. And he immediately responded, before she was finished, of course, and said, and then she blah, 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 blah. You could, not joking, and I'm not mocking, you could replace almost all of, well, he did with blah, 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 because it doesn't really matter, because we're responding to past triggers anyway, so we just as well say blah, blah, blah. Makes just as much sense. I said, no, how did it all start? I decided I was going to show them how it really happened and what they could do. How did it all start from the very beginning? Now, they both made abortive attempts. Well, no, it took a while, but she got to the moment where he came up and grabbed her. That's where it began. That's where that particular event began. Actually, their reactions to each other both began at their births. But for this particular event, he came up and he grabbed her. So I took them through the triggers that I just explained to you, that they were both triggered by thousands of past events, most of which they couldn't even remember. And as soon as he touched her, she was triggered by all those other things and was actually already hypersensitized by all the past wounds. They both argued how they were each justified in their trigger. And that's what we do. We think that we are rational human beings. We're not. We decide whether a thing is good or right, or we like a thing, and then we use our brains to explain it, to justify it, which is what they were doing. So she said, well, but see, my reaction was justified because blah, 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 blah. And unwittingly, she was explaining her past. And he said, well, no, my response was justified because, and I said, you're both right. You're both right in that your response would have been justified in the past. All those things really did happen in the past. And that's how you really did learn how to what? Survive, not be happy. Big difference. Justified in the past, but not justified in the present, and certainly not conducive to being happy. It's only survival. Do you both want to spend the rest of your lives sucking air through a straw while you're under the water in the middle of the Pacific Ocean? Yes or no? They both agreed that it was probably not a good idea, and that it would be better to either get on the cruise ship, which is pretty fun, or on land. So how can we do this differently? First, pause. He grabs her, and they both need to pause. So for her, what would it look like? Remember, he's in the process of grabbing her and swinging her into him to give her a kiss. And she's triggered. She's instantly angry. How long did it take her to go from his grabbing her to her feeling angry? We'll rough it because we actually do know the relative latent periods of responses. We're going to say 0.3 seconds, roughly. All right, she gets the 0.3 seconds, no problem. But after 0.3 seconds, she needs to say, whoa. What am I going to do? She doesn't need to say whoa out loud. She can reach out now and touch him. And it works all the better if she's thought about this ahead of time so that she's prepared for it. The next time he does something that I just don't understand and I feel hyper emotional, or as I said at the beginning of this chat, where my response is out of proportion to the event. He touched her and she just jerked back. That's called out of proportion. So she reached back, she reached over with her other hand and touched him and said, give me a minute. Just give me a second. Just wait right there while I take a second to think. And then she, inside her head, says, so what am I doing here? What's really happening? Is my response justified by what he's doing? No. So what do I really want? I really want to feel close to him. He came up here to be close to me. What would be a better response? Possibly return his affection. See? Now, for him, what would be an appropriate response to her saying, give me a minute? I've learned this when I'm in stores, and you can see store clerks who've got a line of people complaining to them. And of course, everybody wants attention right this minute. You know, try this sometime in a store, magical words to somebody who's just harried and feeling hassled by everybody. I say, and I don't use it as a technique, but I actually say, take your time. And I suggested that to him. That he responded to her by saying, just take your time. And if she says, why now? Then you respond with something that you've thought about, that you've prepared. Now, admittedly, you can't prepare for every response of your partner, but there are some that are common enough that you can. Like an example, when people come to me and they, with an attitude, say, well, how come you did? I actually learned this response because I learned that it's very disarming and it gives me a chance to think and it gives them a chance to think. And somebody says, why did you do this? And I say, I'm pretty sure I was just stupid at the time. That's pretty disarming. It's very difficult for people to keep attacking you when you just called yourself stupid. So he could say that. Why now? Because I was stupid. I should have come up and smothered you with kisses long before now. But I got occupied with spreadsheets. I was an idiot. So I had them practice that. And by the end of the conversation, their hands were all over each other. I had to close the call because it was getting embarrassing, because they were so affectionate, because it was difficult. Peace, that's what we're looking for. Anything that is not peaceful. And the more times that we practice changing the pattern of the trigger, the more our confidence grows. And as our confidence grows, we become more peaceful. You're seeing the cycle, right? Peace, confidence, and before long, there just isn't anything that can bother you. And eventually, although you can't make a trigger not happen, you will discover the triggers become less frequent. They become less powerful. And eventually, one day you'll notice, I haven't been triggered by anything for days. Ooh. Then apparently you're learning something. Very cool. New subject. I know a woman, we'll call her Vika, who was raised by a family that is fairly unremarkable when you really get to know families. The mother was a inveterate complainer. I mean, a victim of Olympic stature. Critical, miserable. She could find something wrong with everything. Not just wrong, but how it intentionally hurt her. The father was more withdrawn, and he chose mostly to withdraw into a bottle containing alcohol, of course, not just any bottle. And the parents divorced years ago, but they're still living in the same house. I'm glad I don't live in that house. They've been living in the same house for years, mostly for financial reasons, but also because, well, they're just less lonely having somebody in the house, even though the person who's in the house is somebody that triggers them every time they breathe. Most of us would actually rather be with somebody who is unpleasant than be completely alone. That's been proven by studies. And to make this worse, they both come from a country that is especially noted, and this isn't my judgment. The lady Vika who's telling me this says, everybody in our country recognizes that the pastime of people in our country is complaining, victimhood, dishonesty, manipulation, and alcohol. So not my assessment at all. But she said, this is what characterizes my country. And yes, these characteristics exist in, countries everywhere. But this particular country has been genuinely victimized, genuinely beaten up, genuinely rolled over, genuinely invaded, hurt, killed, robbed, raped, pick a word, over the centuries, to the point that it's become embedded in their cells. Now, you think I'm being metaphorical, but I'm not. Literally embedded in their cells, this pattern of genuine victimhood, because such long patterns of behavior literally change the protein makeup of our epigenome. And I've talked about epigenetics before, and you can go to the Master Index and learn more about it. It changes our epigenome, which then controls the expression of our DNA. So it is actually correct to say that a country can have a cultural DNA. Now, the DNA doesn't alter, but if you can control the expression of the DNA, well, then you've controlled the DNA. You've changed the DNA effectively. So this woman comes from a terribly victimized country where everybody victimizes each other. And she learned about real love. She found it. in other words, found people who would love her. She trusted them, and her transformation has been miraculous. No kidding. It's not a word I use a lot, but wow. To watch her go from that household to who she is now with the confidence she has, stunning. So we spoke by Skype one day, and she was just all bubbly. This is the lady from the victimized alcoholic kingdom, giggling, smiling, just effervescent. By contrast, I was just feeling, actually not so much contrast, just different. I was feeling pretty mellow when I began the call. It's just where I was when we began the call. Mellow, peaceful. I was relatively quiet. In fact, as she was all bubbly, giggling, and effervescent, I didn't say anything at all. She babbled for about 2 to 3 minutes by the way. Babble is not a negative word. It sometimes is used that way. He just babbled on and on. No. I mean babbled in the way that a 3-year-old babbles. Happy, ebullient, cheerful, without any defense. Words and ideas and feelings and thoughts just bubbling, alarmingly close, I know, to the word babbling. So she babbled happily for 2 to 3 minutes, and then she paused. And she got quiet, then silent. She said, wait, I don't have to conform, do I? Oh, I pretty much knew what she was talking about, but just to be sure, I said, conform to what? She said, to you. I said, conform how? She said, I'm just all excited about life right now and about some of the things that I'm learning and have been learning. I can hardly contain myself. I'm having so much fun. But your mood, your feelings right now are just different. You're not all bubbling. You're just being quiet. In fact, if I were guessing, I would say that you're probably just enjoying my excitement. And I don't have to change my excitement. I can just be me, and you'll be you, and that doesn't make me wrong. I don't have to conform my mood to yours. That's pretty insightful. In fact, pretty sure she's the first person who's ever said that, who's ever noticed that. And, well, she may not have been the first one to notice it, but pretty sure she's the first one to say it. And I said, no, you really don't. And you're right. Your mood, and see, moods just are. I'm not saying one is better than the other. Your mood at the beginning of the call was distinctly different from mine. And no, you don't have to change yours. And no, as you noticed, I didn't change mine to match yours. She said, I've been conforming all my life to adapt to whatever I thought somebody else wanted or to what they were. I really like this new way of not feeling compelled to conform. It's relaxing that I get to be me. This is a really profound, brilliant observation on her part. She expresses a condition that all of us know to some extent. I'm going to say that again. We have all experienced what she has experienced all of her life. Without feeling loved unconditionally, we somehow know something is missing. So we try to fill it however we can. We discover that the approval of other people is pretty hot stuff. We like it. We learned to love it when we were 2 years old and we did something and other people went, you're so fill in the blank, responsible, cute. In my case, it was constantly cute. You're so smart. You're so whatever. Well, 2-year-olds ain't stupid. If adults are going to compliment them for doing something that they just did, they're going to do it again. So the approval of other people is pretty great, especially in the absence of any alternative. So we do that. We do whatever it takes to earn approval. But it's exhausting. It's exhausting. Constantly changing direction. I mean, we're just constantly going here if somebody wants us to act like that, and then somebody else comes in the room and then we change to that, or the person that we're with just changes their mood, or they're triggered by something that we say, and so we react to that. It's enough to make you nuts. Take a shoebox, put half a dozen marbles in the bottom of the shoebox, and just shake the shoebox and see what the marbles do. They react. They react instantly. If you shake fast, they react very quickly. And they react so fast, you can't even keep track of why they're going in any particular direction, whether they're reacting to the box, whether they're reacting to each other. It becomes an indecipherable mess. And so are we. We move here. No, move there. No, change direction. No. You want two people in conversation, and they're constantly observing the other person so that they can react the right way. I played tennis for years. And it's the exhaustion in tennis isn't the number of steps you take. Runners take far more steps in the same period of time. If you say run the 400 meters or actually any race, it's the exertion. The exertion of tennis is the stress of sudden changes in direction. They take a toll on your joints, I discovered too. But that's what's exhausting. Somebody hits the ball to you and you have to immediately accelerate with all the strength you have in your muscles to get there. Then the ball goes over the net, hopefully. Your opponent hits the ball back in a direction that would be most difficult for you to hit. That's the idea in tennis. And so you have to completely change direction and exert all of your strength to change direction again. Whew. Tennis can be exhausting, and eventually, if you do it enough on your joints, it can actually become debilitating. We live like that, like we're playing emotional tennis all the time. But where the price of losing isn't 6-1, you lost the set. The price of losing is emotional death. Yuck. We conform to demands, unspoken demands, drama, anger, fears, the past, rejection, disapproval. It just goes on and on. Or we could relax, like this lady did. Just relax. Stop conforming. Now, the word conforming sounds passive. It's not. Conforming is actually a way of manipulating other people for their approval. By relaxing, it's way more authentic. By being yourself, it's less exhausting. And the reward is just this peace and confidence that can't be described to you until you've actually done it. You can't know what it's like to be unconditionally loved until you feel it. Can't. I could describe it to you all day long and you wouldn't get it. No more conforming. No more adjusting to what everybody wants. Be you. Now, I'm not saying disregard what people need. You don't scream at them just because you feel like it. No. Be your true self. Who we really are isn't ruled by fear, so there wouldn't be any screaming involved. It's a pretty great way to live. And she gives a nice illustration of it. New subject. I know a woman who has struggled her entire life just to survive. That's it. No happiness, survive. She's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, like I alluded to earlier. She's got a straw in her mouth and it sticks above the water a couple of inches, and every single wave that goes by puts seawater down the straw and into her lungs. Not fun, but she's been surviving. She's gone from job to job, relationship to a relationship. She has no relationship skills, as close to zero as you can get. No sense. She had no sense of who she was. After finding people to love her, she still struggles at times. Well, duh, because she's got the effect of the past. A lifetime of misery doesn't just go away in 5 minutes. There's still lots to do. Learning how to function in a full-time job. She hadn't had a full-time job in a very long time. Finding a new place to live, learning how to have friends, learning how to pay off debts for the years that she was lost and was using up every resource she had and borrowing from the resources of other people. Sometimes it just gets overwhelming to her. And she and I have talked about this. And I've said to her on many occasions when she calls and she starts off the conversation with, this is not an uncommon lead for her, I'm just so overwhelmed. Is there anybody listening to me who hasn't felt that, said that, thought that? Doubt it. There is no overwhelmed when we just start where we are, not try to correct the mistakes of a lifetime. Start here, right here, and do things one at a time. One decision. There's no overwhelmed in one. I would find it overwhelming to get from where I am right now in the next 30 seconds to the top of Mount Everest. That would be overwhelming. Now, I have zero interest in climbing Mount Everest, but one step at a time, because of the way they have changed doing expeditions to Everest, oh my, they're taking all kinds of people to the top of the world's highest mountain, because one step at a time, they've discovered they can do it. I don't know what the current record is, but at one point, the record for the oldest person was 70-something. The record for the youngest person was like 11. A blind man has gone to the top of Mount Everest. There are very few things that can't be done one step at a time. There's no overwhelmed to that. And when I've said that, at times she has said, you don't understand. I have all these people at work to make happy. I have supervisors to please. I have debts to consolidate and pay off. I have a part-time job that I do sometimes. I have my health to maintain, blah, blah, blah. And then she just starts off, and you can translate all that to blah, blah, blah. And I pretty much have to interrupt because she could do this list all day. No, dear, you don't. You don't have all those things to do. In fact, it is impossible. There's no way that you could attend to any 2 or 3 of those things in this moment. No, you can only do one. There's only one thing to do. You have one client or patient or customer, whoever's listening, to serve. One boss, one supervisor. Not to please them, but to serve them. Pleasing them is up to them. I can serve somebody and give them absolutely everything they need. I had that experience actually earlier this morning. I gave somebody what they needed, and they were furious because I didn't give them what they wanted, which it turns out were not the same thing. So I have one client, patient, customer to serve, one, then the next one. Actually, I shouldn't put 2 fingers up. It's just the next one again. I don't have an entire day to take care of. Certainly not all week, the duties of all week, which would overwhelm you in an instant. You can only make one call at a time. Be on the phone at one time about your debts. One paycheck to gather and to use to place one stone in your foundation of financial security. One supervisor to get input and education from in one moment. One step toward regaining your health. She has a stress-related chronic disease, which has just debilitated her in the past and nearly killed her. And she responded to her stress by smoking, drinking, and worrying, which made her stress worse, and that's why she nearly died. One cigarette, not to smoke, at a time, just one, aware that the next one could put you in a spiral that would be overwhelming. But not smoking one cigarette, you can handle that. One drink to not put down your throat. One call to a friend who could love you, which would do more for your stress than any number of medications your doctor would give you. And I've read her doctor's report where his doctor said, I could put you on this medication and this medication and this medication, or you could get rid of the stress in your life and I wouldn't need to put you on any of them. And well, naturally, I giggled out loud at her about that because I've been telling her that for a couple of years. One thing at a time. There's no overwhelmed. She writes, I'm on a break at work. I'm focused on staying right in this moment, doing my best and enjoying what I have instead of running off into the future and feeling overwhelmed. That overwhelmed thing has ruled my life. In fact, ruined my life. I've had to pull myself back from doing it many times last night and today. See, all this happened after my conversation with her about overwhelmed. She said, but is almost always followed by an excuse. She said, but, and then she actually put 3 dots. But, 1, 2, 3, it's working. So I've had to pull myself back, but it's working. Hallelujah. Hallelujah for all of us. If this woman, considering how far back she was in the beginning, can recover in all of these many ways, financial, professional, emotional, health, it goes on, all the things you could think of that could go bad in your life, she did. And one at a time, one step at a time, she dealt with it, and it's working, in her own words. You can do this, I said to her. And I say it to everybody who's listening. One step at a time, we really can do it. She said, I've got a lot of things to do this week and next. And in the past, she would have said, so I'm overwhelmed. She said, but, I emphasize the word because it's always followed with something negative. She said, but every time I go to think of the week and the next week, I think, no, wrong. I'm here right now, right here, and I'll focus on that. Well, I'm deliriously happy that she's realizing this. She said, I intend to be busy in the future, solving my finances and everything else, but I'm committed to conquering this being overwhelmed. You're going to sort this out, baby. About your finances, you just tell people that you're doing everything you can do. I've been in that much financial difficulty. I have. And I just tell people when they say, we need you to send us a check for, make it up, $535. And I say, well, I have $5, which is significantly less than $535. So I have $5 to send you unless you have another suggestion. In other words, I hit the tennis ball back over the net to them. What are you going to do with it now? They don't ever have a response to that. Well, we need $500. I've got that written down. In fact, I have your bill right here in front of me. You need $500. So you don't need to tell me that again. I've got that. What I need you to understand is I have $5. So you just tell these people that you're doing everything you can do. You send them your bank statement if need be. You're not just sitting around. You are working your butt off and your income is improving as a result. And it looks very good for improving even more. In fact, there's a guaranteed pay raise coming up in 3 months and you tell them that. You will sort it out one step at a time and you say that to them and to yourself. She said, I've spent my whole life avoiding stuff as I get overwhelmed. So what if I just learned to be happy while I'm busy? Wouldn't that be something? It really would. It really is, actually. New subject. A woman I know is early in her real love experience. And she's raising a 16-year-old boy, which is difficult enough no matter where you are in your real love experience. Her ex shares custody, but he's less than reliable. Not a new story. We talked on Skype about how the day arrived for her son to go and be with the ex. You know, that those two words that I hate more than pretty much any two words on earth: shared custody. Oh. So the boy was about to go to the ex, but the ex texted at the last minute and said that he'd be out of town for the rest of the week. Of course, now he knew this a week ahead of time, but he waits till 2 minutes before they leave the house and tells them that. And could you just handle the son like there was a choice now? She was furious. She asked me why it still affected her so much, since he's been acting like this from the very beginning when they divorced, when the kid was 4. So for 12 years, she has been triggered by this irresponsible man. All your life, you've just survived without the love you needed. So you learned just to do without. And you learned to control everything you could control. People, events, things. It gave you a brief and superficial sense of safety, which was, well, crap, but it felt a whole lot better than nothing. All your life you've been doing this. So when something is out of control, that terrifies you. When something is out of your control, like your ex just jetting off to wherever, your entire world goes out of balance. The tilt of the earth changes 10 degrees. There's a sense of chaos that you hate. It reminds you of your entire childhood. We're back to talking about triggers again. It reminds you of your marriage with your now ex-partner. Out of control. You didn't get what you wanted, not in your childhood, not in your first marriage, and you hated it. So now when you're out of control, it's like there's not just a pebble in your shoe, but a boulder. And you have to get rid of it. You have to take control. It bothers you. You want control back. But even if you succeed, controlling never works. You just stay infuriated, and then you control the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and your whole energy is given over to controlling people and things. What works? Trust. Trust works. The intuitive opposite of control. Trust what? Obvious question. Trust, let's just take a stab here at some things you could trust. Trust that there are people who love you. And that's more than a stab, because I know that to be true. You have more people right now loving you in your life than you've ever had. Actually, it's more than that. More than you ever thought possible. More than you've ever seen. You could trust that God loves you and that maybe you don't have to be God yourself. Maybe he's got, I don't know, some awareness of what's going on here. Remember that your son will do a lot better with more of your time and love than with all the superficial time in the world with his dad, even if you could control that to happen. You have said to me before, well, but his son needs his dad's time. Well, yes. And since his dad never gives it to him, why keep repeating that? Even when his dad is with him, it's superficial. At most, they watch television, but usually his dad's doing something else without him, so he's never really with his dad anyway. You should be thrilled that his dad is at least not even in the house, and you get to be with your son. After a lifetime of controlling, I get it that trust would seem counterintuitive. When we're afraid, we grab hold of things. We tie up loose ends. We control. But trust is voluntarily giving up control. Pay attention, because I'm teaching you something really that matters. All your life, you've had control taken from you. Trust is giving up control that wasn't yours in the first place, which is very different from your lifetime of experience where control was taken from you. It's a choice you make, and you're giving up control, or you're trusting people who, pause, actually care about you, which has never happened before. That's why this is so different. After a lifetime of feeling out of control, why would you even think about giving up control? Because the people who took control before wanted the control. It was for them. And now you're finding people, or somebody, just one person, who understands what love really is, who is a wise person, who doesn't want the control, doesn't need it, who would only love and teach you. Turns into a completely different experience for you and for everybody who's listening. We'll talk to you again in a week.